Hi everyone, my name is Shelby, and for this presentation, I'm going to be talking to you about coal mining disasters. First, we will start by talking about how coal is mined. There are two ways that it is done, and then we will shift into the classification of a coal mine disaster, and then I will spend the majority of the time talking to you about coal mining disasters on a global scale. When I first started researching coal mining disasters, I was pretty shocked to see the numbers of mining incidents just in the United States alone. Since 1975, the United States has incurred 625 coal mining disasters. And in 1909 was the worst year for coal mining disasters, and there were 20 in the US alone. But between the years of 1901 to 1925, there were 305 coal mining disasters in the United States alone. Most of these were caused by carbon monoxide poisoning and coal dust explosions. Briefly, I will just talk to you about how coal is mined. There are two methods. The first is surface mining, and this is when the mining takes place less than 200 feet below ground surface. The other form of mining is underground, and this is when they have to actually build shafts into the ground, and these go down hundreds to thousands of feet. In order for a mining disaster to be claimed as such, it must have had an accident that has claimed 5 or more lives. Luckily, with the use of research and technology and preventative programs like MSHA, Mine Safety and Health Administration, and the Bureau of Mines, mining disasters have significantly decreased in the last 30 years. The first coal mine disaster that we will look at is the Monongah disaster, which took place in West Virginia. This is the largest mining catastrophe in the United States. The disaster occurred on December 6th of 1907 at two mines of the Monongah Mine Facility in West Virginia. The total number of fatalities was 361, and a majority of these were Italian immigrants. The disaster was caused by fire damp and coal dust explosion in mines 6 and 7. This devastated the ventilation system, the boiler house, fan, and the openings of the mine. Rescue workers could hardly work due to the lack of breathing equipment. Few of them also succumbed to death because of suffocation. The source of initial ignition for the explosion was attributed to either electric arcs or open lights. Two mining disasters affected Dhanbad, India. The first was in 1965, and it killed 375 miners. The initial ignition was suspected to have come from the hurricane lantern of a person who entered the underground gallery. The mine's management alleged this to be an intentional act of ignition. This occurred on the night between the 27th and 28th of May. 10 years later, on December 27, 1975, another mine disaster affected Dhanbad and killed 372 people. The coal dust explosion in the deep mine led to a blast that damaged the roof barrier and a huge water body sitting above it. Most of the deaths were because of the flooding of water into the mine. The Oaks Colliery explosion is the second deadliest coal mine disaster in the United Kingdom. It took place on December 12, 1866, at the Oaks Colliery near Barnsley, South Yorkshire. The death toll of this major incident was reported to be 388 people. 27 of those were rescuers. It was a fire damp and coal dust explosion suspected to have been ignited by the digging of new workings at the underground mine. The mine was known for containing fire damp since its first disaster in 1847 that had killed 73 people. In the days passing after the initial explosion, there were two more explosions. This is likely due to the coal still smoldering. Over the next 30 to 50 years, there were 17 additional explosions until the mine finally closed operations. The Wanke Colliery disaster in Rhodesia, which is also known as Zimbabwe, killed 426 people. The disaster occurred June 6, 1972, at the No. 2 mine shaft of the Wanke Colliery. The disaster was caused by multiple explosions in the underground coal mine. The explosion turned into a blast, which devastated the main shaft. 4 men working near the surface were instantly killed, and more than 400 mine workers were trapped in rock and deadly methane and carbon monoxide fumes in the underground. The initial explosion was suspected to have emanated from a dynamite magazine. There were also 2 new explosions the day following that filled the underground tunnels with clouds of poisonous gas, making the rescue attempts impossible. The Colebrook mine disaster took place on January 21, 1960, at the Colebrook North Mine. The Colebrook mine disaster is the worst ever in South Africa's mining history. The disaster took 435 lives. The collapse of the underground mine area is what caused the disaster. The underground collapse was caused by the disintegration of around 900 underground pillars supporting the tunnel roofs. At the time of the incident, there were around 1,000 miners working underground. Half of them could survive by escaping via an inclined shaft. Few rescue workers also died getting trapped with collapsed ground and methane gas. The Mitsui mine coal explosion occurred on November 9, 1963. It was the second deadliest coal mining disaster in Japan. 458 miners were killed and 833 were injured. It occurred due to a coal dust explosion 500 meters below the mine's ground level. The explosion led to a massive blast which collapsed the tunnel roof at multiple locations. Most of the deaths were due to carbon monoxide poisoning. Most of the poisoned survivors suffered severe brain damage. This was one of the oldest and largest coal mines in Japan, and it was taken over by Mitsui in 1899. The coal mine closed its operations in 1997. The Liaobeidong colliery disaster occurred on May 9, 1960. It was the second deadliest mine disaster in China. The accident was caused by a methane explosion. The information about the catastrophe was suppressed by the Chinese government for more than 3 decades. It was finally revealed in 1992. The Liaobeidong disaster is the most fatal coal mine disaster since the inception of People's Republic of China in 1949. This disaster killed 684 people. The Mitsubishi Hoyo coal mine disaster took place on December 15, 1914. This is the deadliest mining accident in Japan, killing 687. It was caused by a gas explosion, which occurred underground. This created a thick black smoke to come gushing out of the air vents before it finally blew the elevator cage 15 meters up into the air with a massive blast. People within a 200-meter radius of the mine entrance were also impacted by the explosion. The Corias coal mine disaster occurred on March 10, 1906. The total death toll was 1,099 and is the second deadliest coal mining disaster in history. The coal mine disaster was caused by a massive explosion sparked by an underground fire in one of the pits of the Corrientes Colliery. The fire was detected around 270 meters underground in the pit the afternoon before the explosion. The outlets of the pit were closed to starve the fire of oxygen. The next morning, a huge explosion emanated from the still smoldering fire at the pit and caused a blast on the surface. Workers inside the mine's deep tunnels, as well as people on the surface, were killed in the disaster. The fissures in the pit's walls were believed to have allowed the flammable gases to cause the coal dust explosion underground. The cause of the initial fire is suspected to be either because of the mishandling of mining explosives or due to the ignition of methane by a flame from a miner's lamp. The Bangsahu Colliery disaster is the worst in history. This occurred in China on April 26, 1942. The disaster claimed 1,549 lives. The fatal explosion of the underground coal mine was caused by a mixture of gas and coal dust. The underground fire exploded out of the mine shaft entrance. The ventilation system was shut off, and the pit head was sealed by the mine operator to deprive the underground of oxygen. An electric fence was erected around the pit to obstruct the entry of miners' relatives. The coal mine was forcefully operated by the Japanese until the end of World War II in 1945. The Soviet Union conducted an investigation on the mine accident following the liberation of the Liaoning province from the Japanese Army's control. Carbon monoxide poisoning due to the closure of the ventilation system was reported to have caused most of the deaths. I know this presentation is on coal mining disasters, but I do want to incorporate two landmarks in U.S. history that are from different types of explosions. These are both metal and non-metal mine disasters in U.S. history. The first was the Sunshine Mine incident in Kellogg, Idaho, which is just a couple miles from where I live. This occurred on May 2nd, 1972. There was a fire in the mine, and this killed 91 people. I actually have family members who were in this mine accident. The other mine accident was the Granite Mountain Shaft in Butte, Montana. This was a copper mine, and this incident occurred on June 8th, 1917. This was also a fire, and this took 163 lives. In both Kellogg and Butte, there are memorials. As you can see in the top left corner, there is a miner memorial statue. This can be found at the head of Big Creek, and a lot of visitors stop by this. And there's also a memorial in Butte, Montana for all the lives lost there as well. This presentation was an eye-opening experience for me. I never realized how many people were involved in these coal mining disasters because, quite frankly, they aren't talked about. And unless you do research, you're not going to find out this information. So I hope everybody that watches this learns a little bit more about the history of coal mining and really appreciates the miners that we have in every industry. I know that I have a better appreciation for the miners that I know. I do live in a mining community, and I really appreciate everything that they do now. And although we have had fewer disasters due to the advances in technology and research, they're still going to happen because accidents are just inevitable. I hope you all leave here today with a better appreciation for the men and women who have lost their lives. And I just want to take a few moments to honor those who have fallen. Here's a list of my references. If you would like to know more about coal mining disasters, here in the United States, I recommend taking a look at the MSHA fact sheet. This had so much information and statistics about coal mining disasters here in the United States, what caused them, how many lives were taken, etc. And thank you for watching my presentation. I hope you enjoyed it.